All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Teja's second activity-based session. We believe this session's activities will bring a unique experience for each one as we diagnose our mental health. Something as simple as checking in with our daily mood or emotions can be impactful and even preventative from a mental health perspective. We often ask for fitness tips or discuss common health issues, but we hesitate to talk about mental health. Today's session will hopefully dissolve some of the rigid beliefs and be a safe place to share our candid stories. We have three activities lined up for you, followed by a meditation. Keep your pens and journals handy and join us with an open mind. Expect no judgment and just heart to heart discussions. Some basic usual housekeeping rules: keep your profile on mute, and if you want to say something, use the chat window. And just have fun. I'll hand you over to Kalyani.
Thank you very much, Sachin. All good. Welcome to our 11th session today. It's really exciting. We've done 10 sessions already, and I'm hoping you're getting value out of this. We really enjoyed planning each session, coming up with activities and getting guest speakers and really discussing the content. There's a lot of research involved, but we absolutely love it. So I hope you get value out of our sessions. So today's session is based on mental health, as Sachin mentioned. And we have three activities. They're very interactive, and we hope you participate and make your own notes. And we'll have points in the session for discussion where we are more than happy to, you can unmute your microphones and speak to us and share your stories as well. We were inspired by Mental Health Week just passed, and we had the World Mental Health Day yesterday, if you were not aware. So we decided that this was very on point to do a session on mental health. It's not as heavy at all as it sounds. It's going to be quite fun and interactive. So why did we call it Emotional Gym? Giving your physical body a workout has so many benefits. And for those of you who joined Spiritual Gym, you saw that giving your mind a workout was very powerful indeed. So the next step is Emotional Gym. We give our brain and our emotions a workout. We bring out those emotions to start with, and then do some cleansing, do some mindfulness, and hopefully we come out lighter, refreshed, and not feeling so burdened with whatever we're thinking on a day-to-day basis. If we can have the next slide, please. So I'm going to dive straight into the first activity. Yeah, so as you can see, there's three activities. First one is checking in. We've just changed the order slightly. So the healthy mind diagnostic will happen second, and then let's talk. So we'll get talking in the last activity. Can we move to the next slide?
Yeah, so this slide is activities overview.
Yeah, can we move to the checking in slide? Yeah, perfect. So first activity is very simple. And if you want to make notes for yourself, keep your pen and journal handy, or feel free to just type it in the chat box. This is interactive. So what are some recurrent emotions that you're feeling currently? And I think we most definitely don't have the same mood throughout the day, but based on what is going on in our life at the moment, whether it's just stress related to work, or whether it's if you're looking forward to something exciting, then you might be generally feeling happy. You're in a happy mood. If you've got exams or assessments coming up, then you're feeling a bit stressed or worried. If you have health issues, then you're probably thinking about what's going on with my health. How am I going to feel better? So although our mood is not the same throughout the day, but if you track back and if you become conscious of the emotions you're feeling, you'll notice that throughout the week, there is a recurrent pattern to your emotions or your thoughts. So tell us something that caused an emotional response in you. Do you actually catch your mood daily? Or do you wait for others to give you feedback? Sometimes you're stressed and worried, and then what happens when you're stressed and worried? You're cranky with others, you cut them short, and people come and say to you, I think you're not in a good mood today. So do you wait to hear that feedback, or do you consciously check and think, how am I feeling today? Why did I overreact to this situation? Why did I get so angry when someone cut me off in traffic? So we want you to share in the chat box some of the emotions that you are feeling that you have probably noticed. And while we wait for someone to type, I'm going to ask Jayanti or Naina, who are going to run the other two activities with me today, to share if they have caught their daily mood.
Yeah, Kalyani, I definitely think I can catch on to my daily mood. And these days I'm doing something called 100 happy days on my Instagram. So if there's any people who follow my personal Instagram, they'll see my stories that I post something every day that makes me happy. So that's something that switches my mood. But definitely that's an activity that makes me evaluate at the moment, how am I feeling right now? And if there's a meeting with my boss, those are really things, that make you think about, oh, how did that make me feel? So definitely note the important events of my day, and think about what potential response can this trigger in me. For example, a supervisory meeting may trigger a feeling of anxiety in me, and it's something to notice. Naina, what do you think about how what we feel during the day? How can we be more mindful of what we're feeling?
Yeah, we'll come to that a bit later after our activity is done. But let me share that in India, especially in Mumbai, the feelings are changing so quickly from one news item to another news item. We are in a mix of anxiety and relief. Sometimes somebody says, okay, this is it. Now we are saying that the recovery rate is changed and it is going 85% above. So we are relieved. Again, some news comes in that, okay, you have to be very careful. So we are in a mix of anxiety and relief. But I am very happy that it's not only anxiety, it's, in between relief also comes in. And when we talk to each other, when we talk to family and friends, I think it more relief kind of things happen because they share some good things about like how people recovered.
That's great. Thank you both. I've got some messages in the chat box saying someone they catch on the daily mood themselves, which is fantastic. That's exactly the whole point. Uh, if you allow some time to check in on yourself before you go to bed, for example, and reflect on those moments. And there's another message from Gayatri about she has self-realization after moments where there's a sudden burst of anger, for example, which is very true. We oftentimes, when we are in that burst of anger moment, we are totally thinking we are justified, we are in the right place, we have the authority to get angry. But when we go to bed, if we don't digest that emotion or don't reflect back on it, then remember it's going to stay there. You may forget it, but because you've not resolved that thought or that emotion fully, it's going to stay with you like a residual thing, and that will impact so many other things that you're doing in life. So even having that realization and thinking, oh, maybe I didn't need to get that angry, it's not about your ego, it's about letting it go for your own good. Because when you resolve that emotion, you're actually conserving your own energy to process that thought, process the emotion, and actually use the energy for your own benefit the next day, for example. You'll notice you'll probably have a better quality sleep even if you've slept with resolving. It's not as easy as it sounds, but if we start watching it, then we get into this habit of looking back at how the day has been and where I may have overreacted, or and and there's nothing wrong with thinking, oh, I probably didn't do a good job. It's all about forgiving others and forgiving yourself. I think forgiving yourself is really important, and I think Naina also has some story to share about that when we get to her activity part. So thank you everyone for that. Now I just wanted to say to you, what happens when you catch yourself in that mood? For example, when I moved to Australia first, I used to feel low because I missed my family. I was homesick. So usually, if you talk to someone, what would that do to you? Someone that you think empathizes and can really give you a perspective. If you share it with someone, anyone, there's a lot of people who can advise. People always love to advise when you share things that if you're facing some difficulties or if you're feeling a bit low, there's lots of advice you can get. But did you ever notice that if you shared with someone who empathizes or who gave you a positive perspective, a silver lining to that dark cloud, how did that make you feel? And that's what we call check-in partner. Yeah. So I got a message saying it will help us calm down and definitely give us more hope. That's precisely the point. So have you ever given a thought to someone who can be your check-in partner, if you like? So what are the values of that check-in partner though? If I'm facing some kind of difficulty, depends which area of my life it is, obviously. It doesn't have to be the same person. If you're facing dilemma in, say, your financial problems, you probably won't share it with friends or colleagues. Maybe you'll share it with someone who is completely unrelated to your day-to-day life but has more understanding of how finance works, for example. Or you could, if you're running a business and you're stuck with ideas, you probably won't discuss it with your friends. You probably discuss with a mastermind of someone who runs the similar kind of business, who totally relates to your point, who totally understands and can give you more professional advice. So yeah, another message saying we feel lighter. We are not the only one. That's a very, very good point, actually. Really, really on point. So the checking in and having that partner and sharing your emotion can really lighten the burden, can make you feel like, yes, it's a relief and there is a solution. There is potentially something out there that can help me. And oftentimes we see that people who don't do that check-in or that download will keep on having the recurring thoughts. And what happens when you get lost in that box of thoughts? You probably close the lid on yourself and think, oh my God, I'm the only one and there's no solution to this. And sadly, people who start thinking on those lines then slowly move towards anxiety or long-term depression and even suicide. And that's the whole point of discussing mental health. So when we talk about mental health, the word is really heavy and you think, oh, it's not my problem. It's all these people who have depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, or maybe whatever else. But checking in early on is the best way to have that preventative solution rather than going down the trail of, almost having those anxiety attacks on a daily basis. And yet there's nothing wrong with that. The earlier you come to terms with your thinking and understand that there's a solution for it, that's how helpful it will be when you start thinking around those solutions rather than keep thinking about the problems. So there's going to be some announcement about check-in partners. So we're excited about it. And the check-in partner doesn't even have to be someone like a friend or a family member. And people often hesitate to take professional advice. And that's what Jayanti is going to talk us through about from her own personal story as well. You could go to a therapist and sometimes it sounds like, oh, I don't need therapy. I'm not that depressed, honestly. I don't have that many problems, honestly. It could be a counselor. It could be a life coach. So when we use the word life coach, people think, oh my God, that's to empower me. It's not about therapy and getting a solution to all the problems I have in my life. But there's a range of people, professionals that can help you, and even people who are generally within your trust circle. So the values of someone who is your check-in partner is someone who is trustworthy, someone who's not going to ridicule you behind your back, someone who's not going to take your story as, something that they'll make fun of you, and someone who will actually give you hope, or someone who will give you very honest advice. Even there's a lot of people who will give you, say, uh, they'll just console you in a fake manner. That's not what you're looking for either. So you're looking for someone who is going to provide that value and honest feedback, or someone who might tell you, maybe you should think about therapy, and you think, oh, I'm never going to talk to this person again. They think I'm crazy. So I mean, it's obviously, it's not, how do I know if this is my check-in partner? That will be up to kind of trial and error almost. But you'll find, I think the more than the experience, the vibe, you'll feel the vibe. It's all about the emotion again. So we'll be talking more about check-in partners after the session, nearly when the session's finished. Sachin, can you show us the next slide, please? just going through what we observed in this activity. And thank you for sharing about how you're feeling and your mood and what you do about when you feel anxious or when you feel angry. So just remember one thing, that the thoughts you have, 30,000, I don't know how many thousands of thoughts on a daily basis. 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts you had yesterday. And therefore, the emotions you feel are nearly the same as what you've been feeling by and large. So that is the reason why it's to shift gears, to feel a different emotion, you have to first start observing what you're feeling now. When you observe and understand what you're feeling now, that is when you can consciously shift gears to feel a different emotion. And we just talked about how a check-in partner can help with that. So does anyone want to share anything, especially about any experience they've had with check-in partners?
I see in the chat window there is some question about, can we have a stranger as a check-in partner? So I would like to comment on this a little bit, Kalyani. See what happens. Yeah, what happens in see our physical health. What we do is that, you know, we decide like whether we take homeopathy, we take allopathy, we take Ayurveda medicine, or so we depending on our severity of our health problem, we go to you know correct person or appropriate uh, system. See what happens in check-in partner, when you are saying that it's a matter of trust, which is very fundamental to be taking a check-in partner. When a stranger comes in, and what the issue is, whether it is a private issue, whether the stranger. So I believe that taking a stranger is like, when for physical health also, we talk to somebody, a doctor referred by somebody, a practitioner who is known to somebody. So in that also we take a reference of somebody. So a stranger maybe or may not be, there is risk involved. So I would say that when we talk about check-in partners, we also have levels. For example, in physical health, we have first aid. So if you draw a comparison as a first aid in check-in partner, if you have nobody available and you feel like sharing, what do you do? I think your journal or your diary is the first aid, where the check-in partner has serves the purpose of catharsis. So when you don't have anybody available at that moment and you feel like sharing, I think your diary can help you at least give the first aid in terms of catharsis. Now next is how do you find, like Kalyani was mentioning about what the issue is, and then accordingly we choose a checking partner. So stranger, I would suggest that stranger is too much of a risk. But then if you feel that it is not at all harmful, sharing something which is not at all, you are not putting anything at risk, then maybe. Yeah. What do you say, Jayanti?
I want to say something interesting actually, that last week, incidentally, it's interesting that you speak about mental health first aid and as a stranger, because now there is a course called Mental Health First Aid Training, and I'm pleased to inform you that I have done this course. So I'm officially a mental health first aider. So there are people like me who have done this training, who are mental health first aiders that you can approach. They are not completely trained psychologists or therapists, but they can definitely give you like the first line of mental health first aid uh, if you are really in a crisis. So that's definitely one thing. And the other thing, I think, if you want to talk to a stranger and you don't feel complete, if you feel like nobody's going to understand me, okay, like I need a third person's perspective, then the ideal thing to seek is professional help, in my opinion. I am a huge advocate of therapy, but I understand how that may be heavy for somebody. And there are many different forms of professional help, like Kalyani spoke about, like counseling, there's life coaching, all these other things. So really, I think if you want to approach a stranger, try and get to somebody who's professionally trained. There's a lot of value in that.
Thank you both. We have some questions here as well, and some comments. So I'll just share the comments first. So Gayatri is saying that she was a check-in partner for someone, and it was a good experience because it gave her a lot in return for just asking, how are you? So good on you, Gayatri, because it can feel a bit heavy as well. If someone's downloading all these emotions on us, being the check-in partner can also feel a bit heavy. And I think that if you're not a trained psychologist or a therapist, and you think, why is this person telling me all this? And obviously, if you care for them, you feel kind of, how do I help them? I think you need to take in, as a check-in partner, also you need to, before you go to bed, you need to analyze what someone has shared with you, and make sure that it doesn't burden you as well. So check in with yourself when you are a check-in partner. And I think we've got another comment that says that there should be some familiarity and confidence in the check-in partner to lean on advice. That's absolutely true. You wouldn't go and share your story with someone that and even if it's a stranger, I think it's all about the vibe. Your emotion or your vibe will automatically, and your gut, so your intuitive feeling will automatically guide you about whether this person should be your check-in partner and should you share confidential information with them. There's another question about, can we have multiple check-in partners? I'll let Naina talk about that a bit.
I believe it naturally happens that we don't share everything with everybody. So we already have, maybe we are aware or we are not aware, but we have our check-in partners with whom we share selective information, selective issues. For example, we won't talk about our money issues to everybody. We won't talk about our health issues to everybody. So we have check-in partners already existing with us, and it is required. Many times it is required that, because the issue of trust, the issue of confidentiality, the issue of the person's knowledge and person's listening power also matters a lot when we select a check-in partner.
Great, that's great advice. And there's another interesting question about, someone thinks that what if they're too rigid and they think that they don't need to have a check-in partner? Would anyone like to say anything about it, Jayanti?
I would like to remind everyone, whoever is here, and everyone, whoever listens to this afterwards, that we are all human. So, and we're social, right? So that's just my opinion. So no matter how strong we think we are, I think strength comes from vulnerability and from sharing what we're feeling. So I'll speak later about vulnerability and courage and these things, but that's just my opinion.
That's great. I agree with you. So I know that you can feel that you're strong and that others are weak in comparison and they may not be able to help you. But I think
I would suggest that if a person feels that he or she doesn't need a check-in partner, can become a check-in partner to somebody.
Yes, that's a good point. Because sometimes when they themselves become a check-in partner, they kind of think along the lines going, yeah, that's kind of me as well. And then there's another question where they say, by stranger they meant professional, but don't know them personally like friends or family. I think that probably is a good thing. If you're seeking a professional who doesn't know you, then that probably is a good thing. I would say Jayanti can speak more about that because she has a personal story to share.
Can I just add super quickly to this thing that seeing a professional is not just valuable because they are a stranger, but I feel like there's more value to it, not just because they're a stranger, but because they are trained to help you see things in a different way. They're trained with psychology, they're trained about behavior science. So I think it's not just the value add of the fact that they're a complete stranger, because even if you go to a therapist, a counselor, you're going to have first couple of appointments just getting to know each other, and building a rapport. So it's not just after a while, the therapist is not going to be sounding like a stranger to you. You'll know them, but there's still value in that because they're a professional for a reason.
Yeah. And I think I've got another comment where people say that they think they should become more empathetic before becoming a check-in partner. That's something you can cultivate. I mean, even if you think you're not naturally empathetic, I believe you can cultivate that. We are human, like Jayanti said, and we all feel emotions. And if you've ever watched a movie and cried or felt joy or any other feeling, then you are empathetic, right? That's because you can relate, you can be moved by another person's story, which proves that you are empathetic. So if you leave judgment behind, you can become a really good check-in partner, I think. So thank you everyone for sharing and being so candid. And thank you, Jayanti and Naina. We are moving to the next activity, which is healthy mind diagnostic. And I think you're going to really love this. So bring your journal and pen and just participate and have fun. Over to you, Naina.
Yeah. Before we go on to the next slide, let me just explain you what is coming up. You will have one word coming each time on the screen, and what you have to do is immediately after seeing the word, after reading the word, whatever comes first to your mind, just write it in the chat box or on your paper, and then we will share it later. But first thing is that each word I have to respond with another word which comes first to my mind, and then probably the words will move on, so you won't have much time to do that, and we don't want much time to linger on one word. So whatever comes to my mind first looking at that word, I just have to respond with that. So can we have the first word? And mind you that there are no right or wrong answers. There is nothing right or wrong.
If anyone wants to share by unmuting the microphone, please feel free to do so. That's great. Thank you. Would anyone like to share by unmuting their microphone or typing in the chat box? We've got some really good chat happening, which is great.
Now we have interesting, associations people have responded with on these words, and some of these words we will just talk about the words in a while, but we'll go to the next activity before we talk about these words. Anybody would like to share something related to these words, or they have written down on their journals? Please reserve it for further discussion. We'll talk about the interpretations, interesting interpretations of these words and the responses. Okay, Kalyani, can we have the next slide? Before we do the next slide, I would just like to explain that this is a picture, and then you have to quickly write a story about it, your story about it, very quickly. You can write it in the chat window, or you can write it in your journal. I would request, if suppose somebody can write it in the chat window, we will have, we can share it with others. Just look at the picture and write your story about the picture in just few lines, 2, 3 lines, 4 lines.
Kalani, what do you think about the picture? What's your story?
I've got my version, but I can read someone else's version as well.
Yeah.
I've got a very interesting version here.
Okay.
Dr. Smith just got a new car, and his employees are gossiping about and wish they were rich enough to get the same car.
Ooh.
Rational, you would say over rational interpretation of this picture. But when we see anything, what we do is we project our feelings onto that, and that is our reality. Most of the time, the reality, what we see as our reality, is a projection of what we think on the reality, what we see. So in this picture, somebody says that, okay, he's got a new car. That reality shows some, what is the interpretation of this reality or this expression is that a hope of buying a new car. When I say parking, this person is not finding parking. Maybe that I am anxious about getting parking many times when I take my car out, or I'm traveling with somebody and we don't find parking. So that little anxiety about parking is on my mind when I see a car and people talking about it. When I see somebody who's criticizing somebody, the criticism like the car is not parked well. So the person is always conscious about parking cars in a right way, or as per whatever are the given discipline and law. So that is why the person is immediately catching on that this is not parked correctly. Okay, so what interpretation, the thing which we are drawing here is that with this picture, there is nothing in the picture. Whatever we are talking about the picture is our projection. So in any given situation, what we see the situation is the situation plus what emotions of mine I am projecting onto that, and that becomes my reality. And in the now let us go to the words. When we have given responses to words, like for example, somebody says job, hard work. The response could be job, enjoyment. The response could be anything like job, I do not want to do. Like for example, in pushy people, somebody says stay far. Somebody says pushy people give me something like, they really make me strong. Pushy people make me strong. Some people say pushy people is a lot of fun because I can deal with them. So it is pushy people by themselves are not an issue. My response is the matter of concern to me. For example, because if pushy people, every time I get to see pushy people, or I come across them, or I have to interact with them, I will come with my story about pushy people. It may or may not be really, there's nothing like reality. It is my story about pushy people, and then my actions, my behavior will depend upon what story I have about them. So when somebody says pushy people stay far, but then when I have to interact with pushy people and I can't stay far, then my if suppose somebody comes with the pushy people story, like they challenge me and then I can deal with them, then I probably, my approach towards them will be different, my behavior may be different. So these exercises are just, it is mirroring my emotions, any trigger which comes, and how do I mirror my emotions with my story. So I believe that you have enjoyed, and probably you can look into your responses, what you have given in more details yourself, and then see to it that what I have responded to and what is some underlying thing in my response. That is becoming more and more aware about my emotions and how I take my emotions. Yes, Jayanti, if you have something to say on this.
No, I really enjoyed all the responses, and it was really nice because you were not thinking, right? You were just like on your feet, and you were coming up with responses. And the word pushy people, when I thought about pushy people, I thought about boundaries, and what can pushy people teach me about boundaries, maintaining my boundaries, or about patience. So it was a very interesting exercise, and I think like the same words may have a different response at different times, right?
Right, right. And then what happens when we spontaneously respond, it mostly comes from our subconscious. We don't get much time to think and then, write something which rationalizes our answers, or what is correct or what is wrong. And then I want to look good. Nothing of that sort. Mostly the first response which comes spontaneously comes from my subconscious. That's why we thought that whatever words come first to my mind, I should respond with that word.
That's right. That's a great exercise. And like you said, the same word can bring out a completely different response at a different point in time in your life as well. Um, shall we move to the next slide and go to the third activity now?
Do you know, Kalyani, do you want to say the quote before we go about what Sri Kumar Rao said? I really like that. What we are living in is not the reality, it's
Yes.
a reality. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, that's true. So there is a really amazing speaker called Dr. Sri Kumar Rao, and he gives talks all over the world. I think TED Talks, and he's on Mind Valley. Uh, he he says the universe always has your back, no matter what you think. The universe actually is a reflection of you, your thoughts. So Jayanti, I think, gave this analogy in one of the previous Teja sessions where she said, if there's a match being played in a stadium and you're sitting on one side supporting team A and this side supporting team B. So if team B won, the reality is that team B won, and the spectators side, which is team B supporters, are all thrilled and enjoying and cheering away, and team A is all disappointed and sad. So the same reality, team B defeating team A, has different perception for each person, right? Depends where you're coming from. So something that has happened, the perception of it is a reality that you're choosing to see every single time. It is not the reality. So remember that it's in your hands how you perceive the reality, and it can always change. So that, not in saying that, not saying that you have all this power with you and you can dominate the universe, not like that, but become a witnessing person. Staying in that witnessing mode is how the reality will shift for you.
Yeah,
You
and
want to
then what we experience is that when I say that, okay, whatever my reaction to whatever my response to that word was, it also you know uh, it provides a trigger to my behavior. So if suppose I deliberately change my response by becoming aware of it, probably my behavior would also change. And we don't call it right or wrong. We call it functional or dysfunctional. Functional means which helps me grow, which helps me go move on. But dysfunctional is which blocks me, which keeps me stuck. So we don't call it right or wrong, but it is functional means good for me, it works for me, and dysfunctional it doesn't work for me.
That's great. Jayanti, do you want to take on the next activity now?
Rational, you would say over rational interpretation of this picture. But when we see anything, what we do is we project our feelings onto that, and that is our reality. Most of the time, the reality, what we see as our reality, is a projection of what we think on the reality, what we see. So in this picture, somebody says that, okay, he's got a new car. That reality shows some, what is the interpretation of this reality or this expression is that a hope of buying a new car. When I say parking, this person is not finding parking. Maybe that I am anxious about getting parking many times when I take my car out or I'm traveling with somebody and we don't find parking. So that little anxiety about parking is on my mind when I see a car and people talking about it. When I see somebody who's criticizing somebody, the criticism like the car is not parked well. So the person is always conscious about parking cars in a right way or as per whatever are the given discipline and law. So that is why the person is immediately catching on that this is not parked correctly. Okay. So what interpretation, the thing which we are drawing here is that with this picture, there is nothing in the picture. Whatever we are talking about the picture is our projection. So in any given situation, what we see the situation is the situation plus what emotions of mine I am projecting onto that. And that becomes my reality. And in the now let us go to the words. When we have given responses to words, like for example, somebody says job, hard work. The response could be job, enjoyment. The response could be anything like job, I do not want to do. Like for example, in pushy people, somebody says stay far. Somebody says pushy people give me something like, they really make me strong. Pushy people make me strong. Some people say pushy people is a lot of fun because I can deal with them. So it is pushy people by themselves are not an issue. My response is the matter of concern to me. For example, because if pushy people, every time I get to see pushy people or I come across them or I have to interact with them, I will come with my story about pushy people. It may or may not be really, there's nothing like reality. It is my story about pushy people, and then my actions, my behavior will depend upon what story I have about them. So when somebody says pushy people stay far, but then when I have to interact with pushy people and I can't stay far, then my if suppose somebody comes with the pushy people story, like they challenge me and then I can deal with them, then my approach towards them will be different. My behavior may be different. So these exercises are just, it is mirroring my emotions. Any trigger which comes, and how do I mirror my emotions with my story? So I believe that you have enjoyed, and probably you can look into your responses, what you have given in more details yourself, and then see to it that, what I have responded to and what is some underlying thing in my response. That is becoming more and more aware about my emotions and how I take my emotions. Yes, Jayanti, if you have something to say on this.
No, I really enjoyed all the responses, and it was really nice because you were not thinking, right? You were just like on your feet, and you were coming up with responses. And the word pushy people, when I thought about pushy people, I thought about boundaries and what can pushy people teach me about boundaries, maintaining my boundaries, or about patience. So it was a very interesting exercise, and I think like the same words may have a different response at different times, right?
Right, right. And then what happens when we spontaneously respond, it mostly comes from our subconscious. We don't get much time to think and then, write something which rationalizes our answers, or what is correct or what is wrong. And then I want to look good. Nothing of that sort. Mostly the first response which comes spontaneously comes from my subconscious. That's why we thought that whatever words come first to my mind, I should respond with that word.
That's right. That's a great exercise. And like you said, the same word can bring out a completely different response at a different point in time in your life as well. Um, shall we move to the next slide and go to the third activity now?
So let's move on to the next activity now, which is called Let's Talk. So the idea of doing this is that the more we talk about mental health, the more we normalize it, right? And if some of you are following me on my personal Instagram, you know that I talk a lot about therapy. I'm a therapy junkie. So I always talk about different forms of therapy, and I'm really open about mental health. So I really encourage all of you to take this small step to talk about something, um, a time in your life when you were vulnerable and you were courageous. And I think I want to link this back to the example of somebody who spoke about being really strong and not having the need to have a check-in partner. And we spoke about, well, everyone's human, and we feel like there's a lot of strength in dealing with things and coping with things by ourselves. But I think it's the opposite way. I think there's a lot of strength in being vulnerable and open about our emotions. And there's a reference at the end about Brené Brown's talk about vulnerability, and she's a researcher on vulnerability. So she speaks about the link between vulnerability and courage, which I think is really important. So I invite you all to be vulnerable in this moment and talk about an emotional experience of yourself, a lived experience that you've had, or somebody that you know who's close to you, or just an inspiring story that you know about somebody else's mental health. So I'm going to start by sharing my story. So my story is that 3 years ago, when I had first started going to therapy, I booked an Uber to go to the therapist's office, and you have to put in the location, right? So I put in the location saying Reflection Psychology Center, and I thought in my own head that the Uber driver is going to think he's driving a crazy person because I'm going to a psychology center. So, and I'm sure the Uber driver pretty much did not care as long as his ride was finished on time and he could go home. But it's a lot to do with what I thought about myself, right? I had a judgmental view about myself that I'm going to therapy, people must think I'm crazy. Um, but this story has a happy ending, don't worry, because 3 years later, I found myself booking an Uber again. And this was, well, a couple of years into therapy, on and off, and I had become a different person, right? So I booked an Uber again to go to the therapist office. And, I like to make small talk with Uber drivers. And the Uber driver asked me, "Where are you going? What's happening?" And he said, "You look so cheerful and happy." And I said, "Thank you. It's because I'm going to see my therapist today, and I'm so excited. Like therapy days are my favorite days." And I made this really positive conversation about seeing a therapist, and I felt so normal about doing it that I realized that the Uber driver was probably seeing it on my face that I was so happy. So it was not about him or his perception, it was about my perception. And by talking about it, I had normalized it for myself more than anyone else. So I think it's really important to have acknowledge these moments of vulnerability where you sought help, where you spoke about your mental health. So if there's anybody who would like to share an example, or in the meantime, Kalyani, you can share an example from your life.
Sure, Jayanti. Thank you so much for being so transparent and sharing authentically. I do have an example from my own life as well, and I'm so glad now that I look back many years ago. I'm so glad I actually spoke up. I talked to someone and I actually uh, went and got help, which at that point seemed very hard, because when you're in the moment and you're struggling with your emotions, it does seem very difficult. But take that step, because that's going to be something that when you, years after you look back, you'll think that was the wisest decision you took. So this is many years ago. With my first daughter, I had postnatal depression, and everyone around me just said, oh, it's just the baby blues. You're just in a new country. You don't have many friends. You don't have a good social networks. You don't have a support system. So you're just feeling low. I took that on board, and then I pushed along and pushed along, battling the feeling of guilt and battling the feeling of not giving myself enough time, and then feeling bad about it. But I sought help. That's the best thing I did. I actually looked up a service that came home, someone who came home to hear what you're going through and actually give you professional advice. And the best thing that happened as part of that therapy was actually me getting out of the house and meeting people who were going through the same phase. The most important thing for me at that point was the feeling that I'm not alone in this. There's other people who are going through the same scenario. And then I made some friends, and I had a bond with those people who sought the same sort of help. And a few weeks later, when the therapy was finished, I actually remember this moment of inviting those other moms with their little babies. And it was kind of like a mini celebration. I had the option of probably, if I hadn't sought the help and decided maybe I should just go back to India and let the grandparents look after the baby while I just relax. I didn't do that, and I feel very good about myself that I was able to stand strong, get the help. And now when I look back and I see that if I'm struggling with anything, any situation that I find is challenging, when I look back to that day that I made the decision to seek help and not escape from it, I actually feel stronger. And I feel like if I could emerge from that, I can emerge from any other situation. So seek help. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It'll only make you stronger in the process.
Thanks for sharing. That's a wonderful story to hear. And one of the common things that I feel like is, and this may be applicable for many other people, not just you and me, is that when we go through a difficult time in our lives, people are often that, oh, it's just a difficult time, just accept it. I remember when I went to one of my doctors to get a mental health care plan to see the therapist, she told me, maybe you just haven't found the right guy yet. And I thought that was really funny because it's not about finding the right guy. It's not just about the circumstantial time of our lives. It's also about our state of mind, and it's about processing these things. So going through a breakup can leave you depressed, as it did in my case. Having postnatal depression is normal, but I think we've spoken about this, or we've touched upon the subject of forgetting things versus processing these things, and the importance of going through that process of just processing what happened rather than pushing it under the carpet or just like burying it down. So Naina, what are your thoughts as a psychologist about all of this?
And I have plenty of examples where people sought help and they really felt very good about it. I remember one boy, a young engineer who came to Mumbai as a management trainee in my organization, and we noticed that some days he was totally absent from work. He would not report to work, and at the same time he was not available on the training hostel as well. He would leave the training hostel as he's going to work, but he would never enter inside the factory. So then it was found that he would go out of the hostel and just stand at the gate of the factory and didn't enter there. He was just standing there for days together. He was doing that. And then when it was noticed, he was asked to seek help, whether he would like to. He was hesitating in the initial period, but then he decided to take that courage and he came to my office, and then we talked to him, and it was found that the reason was such a small reason, but he had suicidal thoughts over it. You can imagine if a person suppresses that. He was new in the city and he was in a group where all his colleagues would talk the local language and he wouldn't understand a word out of it. So he was so depressed about it that he doesn't understand anything. He had nobody to share anything with. And he had a sister in the city, but she was just married, and he came from the community where married sister's house he won't go without invitation. So it was out of question that he would go and talk to his sister. So he had nobody, and day by day it was accumulating in so much so that he had suicidal thoughts as well. So when he spoke for 2-3 sessions, and then it came out that it's only the question of nobody to talk to. So then it was like, talked about, and then some of few friends were also told that this is the reality which is happening to him, and then we would like to have some people who would speak with him in a common language. Or then slowly he got over that issue, and I would say that in a year's time he was the person who would recommend people to speak to somebody. And then he said that it's not like, it's just like you are consulting a physician about your health, about some fever or some cold or cough. It's just like that, but at that time it is very much required that you seek help.
Thank you. That's a beautiful story, I think. And we often underestimate, we often think that it's not a big deal, is such a common sentence, right? That it's not a big deal. Well, it may seem like it's not a big deal, but when there is an emotional storm inside your head, trust me, it is a big deal.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
So thanks for sharing that story. I think it was really so valuable. And if there's anybody else who's listening to this who would like to share a story, speak about their mental health, or ask us or anybody else who has been through therapy, what are the benefits of seeing a therapist? And then they might be able to tell you, just like this person that you spoke about, that once he went through that process, he got so much value out of it that he would be the first person who would encourage people to do that.
Yeah.
And I think that that says a lot, right, about what seeking help can do for you. And there are many types of help. There's not just going to a psychiatrist and taking antidepressants. That's like the extreme end of the spectrum. But there's a whole big spectrum about who you can see and forms in which you can seek help. There are life coaches, there are therapists, there are counselors, somebody who you think is more culturally appropriate for you. So think about all the options. And if you have a story to share, we're more than happy to be at the receiving end and help you normalize your mental health. So what are some of the action steps that we can take from all of this? So first thing is talking, right? Talk about how you feel. And you may find it very difficult to have that difficult conversation about how you're feeling, but once you get through it, it's like you're free. You've liberated yourself. So it may seem like a difficult thing to do, but talk about it. And like we discussed earlier, talk about it to a trustworthy, a good check-in partner. When you're seeking help, it's important that where you seek that help from. So that's one thing. The second thing is about sharing in a safe space, like we did. Share with us, share wherever you want amongst your group of friends. And if they say, hey, you're crazy, they probably won't, I think. But if that's the perception that's coming up, move to another safer space, but try and talk about these things. The more we talk about it, the more we normalize it. So definitely, it's an act of courage, but I encourage you to take that act of courage. And then if there's any other questions or something else, you can write to us and we'll be happy to answer them. So let's move on to the next bit now.
Sure. Thank you, Jayanti. So as Jayanti mentioned, we are really more than happy to hear your story, and it'll be kept completely confidential. And if talking to us and you feel that this platform is a safe place, then please share with us, and hopefully we can give you some tips or give you some examples of someone who's been in a similar situation, if that can uplift you or if that can change your negative spiral. That's the whole point. And as Jayanti mentioned, it's the more people speak up, the more effective it is in getting rid of the negative connotation of mental health and seeking help. So thank you so much, Jayanti. And we'll move on to the next one, which is appropriate. It's the meditation.
Okay, so let's move on to the meditation now. And I think because we're having some tech issues already, I'm going to not play the music and we can just do the meditation by itself quickly. Take 5 minutes to do that. So, what are we doing today? So, I call this meditation River of Thoughts. And what's the purpose of this meditation? So, I am a person who thinks a lot. So, I'm sure there are many other people like me who are overthinkers. Mm, I mean, hands up, there'll be like lots of people who will say they are. So, I think one of the things that really helps me is to sometimes it's so hard to like sit in one place, focus on your breath, and do all these things, right? So, what really helps for me is to like allow the thoughts to pass and let them flow. So, I call this meditation River of Thoughts meditation. So, what we are going to do as we meditate, you'll find out. So, I want you to first just relax, sit comfortably, and close your eyes. And we're just going to bring our attention to the breath slowly. So take 5 deep belly breaths. 1, let it go. 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I'm going to count from 10 to 1. And at the count of 1, you'll be completely relaxed. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are now completely relaxed. I want you to now visualize that you are sitting on the banks of a river. The weather is perfect, and you can feel the warmth of the sun and the coolness of the wind. And as you breathe, notice the river flowing. The river is not turbulent, it's just flowing in a natural state. Now, you will notice that your mind is drifting and that you have several thoughts coming into your mind. There may be thoughts about what happened during the day, what happened 10 years ago, or there may be thoughts about the future. I want you to focus your attention on the most prominent thought that you're having at this point of time. See that thought floating as a bubble on your head. And slowly, this thought is going into the river. Watch this thought flowing away down the stream. As you breathe, notice other thoughts as they come into your mind. Whatever they are, don't label them as good thoughts or bad thoughts. It's just a thought. Let it come to you And as it goes, watch the thoughts going into the river. These thoughts are not clouding your mind, they're flowing away slowly as they come and go. You may think that you have too many thoughts, and as they come, you're letting them flow. So it doesn't matter if you have too many thoughts. Notice the most prominent of thoughts. Let them be your compass, your guiding light. Flowing into. You don't know where the river is going. You just know that you're allowing these thoughts to come and you're letting them go slowly, one after the other. As you dwell into this, you will notice that your mind is starting to feel calmer. You will notice that your thoughts are slowly becoming, they're orienting towards calmness. Hear the flow of the river. Now, as you're feeling calmer and in a healthier state of mind, we're going to come out slowly from this meditation. I'm going to count from 1 to 5. And at the count of 5, you're going to come out of this meditation. You're going to leave the banks of the river. And you're going to bid farewell to these thoughts. And know that every time your mind is racing, you can come back to the banks of these rivers and allow your thoughts to flow. Drain them into the river. Now, we're ready to come out of the meditation. 1, 2, 3. At the count of 5, you'll be feeling fine, in perfect health, and feeling better than before. 4, 5. Come out as and when you'd like to. And know that you're feeling fine, in perfect health, and better than before. All right. I hope that was good for you. Let us know what you thought about it. What did you think, Naina and Kalyani?
Yeah, I thought it is like I'm witnessing my thoughts without judging them or without being bothered by them. So I could see my thoughts and then I'm flowing them in the river.
I thought there was no pressure to keep your mind empty. Because usually with meditation, everyone associates, oh, don't let the thoughts come, don't let the thoughts come. And that's really hard because you're just resisting these thoughts and you're not calm at all. But this was just flowing because you let the thoughts come, but you just put them away in the river. So you're not controlling it too hard. You're just going with the flow. literally.
That's nice, right? Last time I did this meditation with someone who lives in Melbourne, and they said that they were living next to a river, and that really helped them to visualize. And I think it's the same from some of us who live in Brisbane. It's a really nice thing to actually be living close to a river, allow our thoughts to be emptied into the river.
That's great. Yep. I visualize myself next to Parramatta River, if that helps. Okay, thank you, Jayanti. We'll move on to the next slide. And I think it's just we're getting close to the finish of our session today. Can we go to the next slide? Ooh. Oops. Lost the slides again. Okay, perfect. I'll just quickly go through the summary and then Jayanti will talk about the handy references before we wrap up for today. So remember we did 3 activities and we talked about the importance of checking in. So checking in with yourself, revisiting your day, revisiting your weeks, and looking at those dominant emotions and thoughts and trying to go to bed and resolving those so that you're not, like Naina said, you're not shoving it under the carpet or, trying hard to forget, but the residue always remains. So when you consciously resolve, you're much more empowered. And then the importance of check-in partners and the values of a check-in partner about someone who we can trust, someone who is going to empower you, giving you honest feedback, giving you hope for the future, and the importance of really speaking your mind. And even if you feel like you're very strong, maybe you should be a check-in partner. And there's always so much to learn from anyone else. And then the second thing, we talked about how we see words and something pops up in our mind that is totally based on what you're feeling at the moment, what is concerning you, what is worrying you, what is dominating your thinking space at the moment. And the way you see things is a perception, it is a version of a reality, not the reality. And the power is in you to change that perception. And sometimes you think, oh, there's negative things happening, how can I even change my perception, how can I make this thing look good if it's not good? That is hard, but the more we can meditate and remain in a witnessing mode, the pain of the situation takes a completely different shape as well. We inflict far too much pain on ourselves by making the situation larger than life. So taking it in a bit, stepping back a bit always helps. And then the last activity we did was talking about normalizing the mental health situation. So people always think mental health about someone crazy mad, but preventative mental health is really, I think, what we need more. And the more people come up and share their stories, we know we're not the only ones. Everyone has faced some or the other difficulties and has even overcome some of the other difficulty. And hearing someone's story can be so inspiring and can make you feel like, you can get over this situation, or you can look, the perspective changes. Sometimes you look at someone's really difficult story and you think, oh, why am I worrying even so much about my situation? It's really small in comparison. So change your perspective. And then we'll just go through some handy references. So if we have the next slide, I'll ask Jayanti to talk about the handy references.
Sure. So the Instagram School of Life and YouTube channel, both of them are so good. They also have some really nice products, something like board games, but for mental health awareness. I thought that was a really cool thing to have at a party. Instead of playing regular board games, we can evaluate each other's mental health. So School of Life, definitely something to check out. Trijog, we recently had a webinar with Trijog. They are a mental health foundation in India. Really nice Instagram page, really inspiring stuff. Pranita Art, she's my friend, and she does a lot of, we bonded over sharing about therapy. So she posts a lot of, she's a big mental health advocate and she posts a lot about therapy. And her art is also really cool. So please check her out. Books. I think some of these books are really, some of them have had a very profound impact on my own life, such as Man's Search for Meaning. I recommend that all of you read it. It's a very small book and you can finish reading it in like a day or two. Although take your time to read it because it is full of profound knowledge and timeless wisdom by Viktor Frankl. There's Subtle Art of Not Giving Up, which is a very basic starter level personal growth book. I thought it would be a really nice thing for someone who wants to like start entering into personal growth or doing something about reflecting on their lives and making a change. And then Brené Brown, I think I spoke about her earlier. She's a researcher on vulnerability. She's also written a book called Rising Strong, something like that. I'm not 100% sure what the name of the book is, but her TED Talk is very popular. And you have to watch it at least once because it is brilliant. And then, yeah, Being Happy is a really simple and really cute book, which I think all of us know about. Some of us know about at least. I've got a copy of it at home. I can just randomly open a page and it makes me so happy, especially because of the illustrations. And one more quick reference, which I forgot to add in this, but I will write in the chat window if anyone wants to look at it. This I posted on my personal Instagram yesterday, I think, about self-compassion exercises. And I find this extremely valuable if I want to take a little break and do something, do a small self-compassion exercise. That really helps me in like boosting my productivity and just helping my overall well-being. So it's by Dr. Christine Neff, and I will put it down in the chat window right now. But if you're working a lot, you want to be productive, you want to take a break, take a self-compassion break, and the exercises are super duper simple. So that's all from me. And thank you to everyone for attending. Kalyani, I think you should speak more about the check-in partner stuff.
Yeah, certainly. If we move to the next slide. So we've got some exciting news that we have decided to become check-in partners. And as Jayanti said, she is a certified first aider in mental health. So, we can definitely be non-judgmental and just listening and empathize. And we've only got 5 sessions available, and we request if you can book within the next 48 hours so we can plan out when we can be available and how you can get the highest value by us being your check-in partners. We've got the pricing there, and the first 2 people who will make the booking, we will give you a absolutely free customized guided meditation. So I know there's heaps of apps out there and there's heaps of guided meditation available on YouTube. There's so many resources, but why do most of us not use them? Because it's really hard for something generic to be effective for you and for your particular situation or particular issue that you're trying to resolve. So Jayanti and I have done this in the past. We have created customized guided meditations using a soft track in the background for the particular issue that you want to resolve, whether it's health, whether it's confidence, whether it's career, or just generally boosting your self-esteem even. And in a previous session, we did share some of the feedback we received, and we are really humbled and we are honored that people find it useful and that it has made a difference in somebody's life. So please reach out to us. We'll be talking a bit more on our Instagram channel as well, and we are in the process of building a website, so we're very excited about that project. So please reach out to us, and we'll be very happy to be your check-in partner and offer you the guided meditation as well. And there's our channels there for you, and I'll just let Sachin talk about the recording for this session, etc. Over to you.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you Kalyani, Jayanti and Naina for the insightful session. We will record this session and have it uploaded on our YouTube channel, which is Teja Discover Radiant. So thank you everyone.